Ah, look at all the lonely people. Ah, look at all the lonely people. Eleanor Rigby. Blah, 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 blah. Hello, and welcome to the next episode of Matt and Todd Go to the Movies. The podcast where, with special guest Tim Davis. The podcast where all three of us went and saw a movie at our local Regal cinema, and now we're sitting in the parking structure after the movie in Matt's Honda Pilot. Gonna talk about this movie a little bit. Gonna talk about such things as should you see this movie, should you not see this movie, should you wait for streaming, do you have to see it in theaters, should you snack during the movie, or do you need to pay attention, should you bring a date, should you not bring a date, I don't know, can you bring kids? We're hoping to touch on all that, maybe. I am Todd Dover.
And I'm Matt Malloy, and yes, we will touch on at least one of those many things that you brought up. We're going to talk about the movie we saw tonight, which is called Blue Beetle. A little sci-fi. That's not what I meant to say. That's not what I wanted to say. A little superhero-style movie from the DC universe, and we will talk about it. But first, Tim, tell us who is in this movie that we may know.
I would argue there's probably only two people that people are aware of in this movie. One being Susan Sarandon. She plays the main villain in this. And George Lopez, who's had many sitcoms over the years and is a comedian. The other one, the lead actor who plays Blue Beetle, is Xolo Maridueña. Not known by name, I would say, but he's part of the Cobra Kai series, the sequel to Karate Kid that's on Netflix and a big hit. But that is it for as far as recognizable names.
Yeah, there you go. So,
wait, I'm sorry. Did you say George Lopez?
I did.
yes.
Oh, sorry. I zoned out
Sitcoms
there.
and sitcoms, comedians, etc.
Yes.
Let's keep your head in the game here, Todd.
Yeah,
Let's
bad,
go.
man.
He's already got his thoughts. He's deep in.
It really is.
Well, so what's this movie about? So this is kind of an origin story movie where we get this sort of alien technology that's unearthed by a mega corporation who wants to use it for evil, and then a long lost daughter of the family that founded the company ends up taking the artifact and giving it to a member of a family that's a Hispanic family that's down on their luck a little bit and are trying to figure out how to make ends meet. Anyway, so this guy, his name is Jaime Reyes, along with his family, gets a hold of this device called the Scarab, which ends up bonding to him and turning him into this kind of symbiotic creature where he has a lot of power generated by the device, which is like a sentient alien tech, I guess is what we'd call it. What I'd call it anyway.
I think you'd be right.
That's fair.
Yeah, and so then obviously the big bad corporation is trying to get this device back. They don't care if they have to kill Jaime Reyes or anyone else. They have these kind of stormtrooper-looking guys that go around, and they of course have their own sort of technology that they want to perfect using this alien technology. So they have these big armor suit things that are ready to go, and in fact this one guy named I think his name is Carafax.
Yeah.
Yes.
Or Carapax.
Yes, you're right.
Something.
Anyway, he's like the prototype guy. He's got like all this armor and like metallic limbs and stuff. And so the movie's kind of a back and forth where the company is trying to get control over the alien tech, and the kid who has it is trying to learn how to use it and learn what his powers are when he has this, and trying to protect his family. And that kind of culminates with they do capture him and take him to this kind of fortress, and we end up with a big showdown. The family comes to help out, and there's a big showdown between Carapax and Jaime Reyes with his blue alien tech. and they have a big showdown, and then we learn about family and love, and things go on
Yeah.
from there.
Family's
So
a big part of it.
that's what I'll say about this.
Family.
And Todd, I will now ask you for your gut reaction to this movie, Blue Beetle.
I will gladly give it. I think on a whole, I liked this movie. However, it does have huge missteps, and like both from a movie making standpoint and from different standpoints. And I will explain. So, the first thing I think that this movie was very confused about, that it didn't know what to do with itself, was about like almost like the setting. Like at times it felt like we should be in the 80s, and then at times we're obviously in 2023, and they bounce between the two, and I didn't like that at all. Like, and it's not that like, I mean, as you kind of go through the movie, you learn more about like Ted Kord, who's kind of like the original Blue Beetle, and they show all the stuff that he used, and it's like these advanced kind of gadgets and stuff like that, but they're from the 80s, like, and he was rocking and rolling in his lab up until like 2008 or something like that. So there's a huge discrepancy in my opinion about like the tech that they kind of use / uncover that is his. And then also like there's so much neon in this movie. It's like every time they stepped into a new place,
The aesthetic
had to have a neon aesthetic. And for me, those kind of colors just scream 80s to me. Maybe that's my own fault. Maybe I can't blame the movie for that. Another thing that I think was a pretty big misstep was the script. It's not tight at all. The humor in it can sometimes be funny, but if you find George Lopez screaming at the top of his lungs funny, then that's what you're in store for almost 2 hours of this movie. Like this movie, for its jokes and stuff, just went for low-hanging fruit. It just always was like, well, let's put George Lopez back in a scene and have him scream really loudly and stuff like that, and that'll be funny, right? That'll get everyone laughing. So and also the story just needed extra. There's too many like one-stop shop answer all questions. Oh, how are we gonna approach this tech? Oh, well, of course George Lopez's character is a genius that just you can't capitalize on it, can't hold down a job, but he's a genius. He can invent and do stuff. Oh, how are we gonna storm this fortress? Oh, well, like Nana over here used to be a rebel, and so she's got the perfect plan. It just was like so lazy at times that it was frustrating. And then honestly, the other thing I gotta really ding it for is the acting. Like the main guy who plays Jaime is fine, and I think he will get better with time, but he's still a young actor, and you can tell. Like, just in a lot of scenes, things weren't clicking for me. I'm just not a big fan of George Lopez in general, and like he was in the movie way too much. Like they relied on him a lot. And then honestly, Susan Sarandon was god awful, like in this movie. Just did not try at all. And like I'm not trying to make this sound too bad on Susan Sarandon, but there were times in the movie where she had to like stand or sit or bend over to pick up something, and it looked like she was struggling in every physical thing she had to do. And people would be like, hey, well, that's Susan Sarandon, she's in her 70s or whatever. And I'm like, yeah, that's my point. That's Susan Sarandon. She's in her 70s. Do not cast that person in a role like this if they can't do the little things they need to do. She is not a name that people are going to like be flocking to Blue Beetle and be like, whoa, Susan Sarandon, I got to go see this movie. So those are the hits. I mean, those are the dings. Those are, they are hard to overcome. The things that I really liked about this movie is, and I'm hoping that DC doesn't pull the plug on this movie or this possible franchise or whatever, but who knows with them right now. I thought there was a great amount of like comic mixture into this origin story they're telling. Like it had a nice balance, I thought, of maybe some updated stuff and some stuff that's from comics, and I really like that balance. I thought this is a great jumping off movie. Like I think if they can follow up this movie and do, learn from their mistakes, I think you could have a very good franchise on your hand. It just takes kind of tightening everything up. A better script, some better acting, and I liked that there's a lot of Blue Beetle lore in this movie, and I don't know a ton about the Blue Beetle, but I just really enjoyed learning more about Ted and all his stuff. It just was fun. I mean, it's like Jaime is the main character for sure, but Ted, who's not even in the movie, seems like also another main character. What you learn about him and stuff like that, and I liked that it's not just like, hey, I found this thing and now I'm a superhero. It's, oh, I'm falling into this legacy of people who existed before me, which I enjoy. I mean, this is a comic. The Jaime Reyes Blue Beetle is a character that's only existed since 2006. So in the comic realm, it's a very new character, and I enjoyed what I saw. They've got some righting of the ship to do, I think, and they need to hone in on some things better, but I think this is a solid outing for a superhero movie. Low-hanging fruit here and there. If they really put forth the effort, I think they can have a really strong second movie. And like I was saying earlier, which you guys weren't hearing because the thing wasn't on, is that to me, I think some of these movies, if you're going to do a movie that has to introduce stuff, then you need the second movie. You need the 1-2 punch. You needed X-Men, the first movie, to get to X2, which is universally thought as probably the best X-Men movie. It wouldn't have gotten there without X-Men 1 setting up everything. So there's a place for these type of movies, setting up the lore, setting up the characters, all this kind of stuff. And this is a fine setup to a second, blast of a movie. And they just got to follow through with it. Who knows if they will? I don't. But that's my critique of this movie. I will pass it along to Tim.
Yeah, I am also kind of two minds of this movie. I'm with you in that Blue Beetle is not a character I know that deeply either. And it was, thinking, okay, DC's going to try and make a movie about an unknown character, or I would say lesser known. And sometimes that works because you get to know somebody from the start, as opposed to preconceived notions from when you make another Batman or a Superman, it's people know those characters. So I was intrigued to see how this went, and I thought the effort was there, and I thought the actors were doing what they were told to do. Some could rise to the task, some didn't. Some hammed it up too much, and not that hamming it up can't be done in a comic book movie, but I feel like some of these performances were too hammy, and not in a funny enough way. And like Susan Sarandon's character asked for hammy, and she didn't do that. This could have been a Raul Julia Street Fighter kind of thing, where you have no business attacking the role, but you do anyway because it's for kids or it's for a certain audience, and she didn't do that. So you're just sitting here watching her, like you said, go through the motions of, I'm the bad guy, I gotta say the bad thing, and just kind of almost rolling her eyes as she says it. And it doesn't make her a believable villain either. It's just, that was a very weak link, and you need your villain to be, someone you want to root to see go down, and that didn't happen here, I didn't think, or at least she didn't get the emotional core she needed. Let's see, I thought the effects were really good, although I did have some Michael Bay Transformers flashbacks at some of the battle scenes. They were a little, despite the coloring was better because you get to the bad guy was in red and Beetle's in blue, but it still was very quick moving and sometimes hard to follow who was hitting who. And I know that's kind of where CG's going, but it's just you can slow it down a little bit so we can see what's happening. And I agree, George Lopez was overused, and the shtick they had him do was not that funny. And I feel like they had other scenes where the humor was meant to land, like the idea of the old granny being this badass rebel warrior is supposed to be funny, and it could have been, but it didn't land for me. And so they were trying to do these cute moments to make the family just as important as Jaime himself. That was a big theme of the movie, but their scenes I felt didn't land the way they wanted, and so it was very much almost, comparing it to the Flash TV show where he needs all his helpers to, even though he's a super powered, almost overpowered character, but he needs the rest of the team in order to win the battle. And I think that is a plot device that has been overused by DC lately, especially on television. So it was just, to me, it was another cliche that I think they could have avoided. like you said, there were elements here of a good movie, and it just ends up being an okay movie, and not even, I would argue, not even a must-watch. And DC needs more must-watches, and that's been their problem the last few years. And that's where I land. Matt?
Well, I largely agree with what you guys have said. I think the strong points to the movie are the last half of the movie is much stronger than the first half to me. I thought the first half really suffered from our particular battle, which is, we saw the trailer so many times. The first half was basically the trailers that you see.
That is fair.
I was having a hard time engaging during the first half, but I thought that they brought the ship around and they closed it out pretty well, with this climactic kind of battle scene and some good family feelings and stuff like that thrown in there too. A little bit of emotion, which I thought they handled fairly well. I liked the Latino representation here. This is a Hispanic kid who gets powers. That's not a group that we've seen a lot of.
Pretty much all the actors were
in movies.
Mexican actors too.
Yeah. So I like to see that. And
Even Susan Sarandon.
Yeah, that's it.
I've seen some comments about this movie online where people who are Latino say, I really felt seen by this movie. Mm-hmm. It really was like a positive thing for me to see as like a representation of my culture. So that's a big plus for me. I'll always cheer for that. But I think, there were two halves of this movie. I didn't like the first half. I liked the second half, and I thought they balanced out pretty well. Tim, I think you had a great point about the CG. I thought that the CG for the suits was well done.
Yeah.
And imaginative, not just
That's fair. Yeah.
not just like, oh, I'm going to generate a gun. Oh, I'm going to generate. There were some different things thrown in there that had to be thought through. So overall, I think I'm probably close to you, Tim. I didn't feel like this was a great entry. I think because of the ordering of what I liked and didn't like, I'd probably come out a little bit and say I liked it, because the end was good for me. But I thought this was generally a fairly average superhero movie, and I don't know anything about the Blue Beetle at all. So to me, it was introduction of this character, and I wouldn't mind seeing where it goes, but I would like a tighter script, better acting, and some more interesting motivations. So, should you see it? Yeah, sure, see it. But
yeah, it's not like
you don't
Up
have
to you.
Yeah.
Up to you. If you feel like it.
If you feel like seeing some superhero stuff that maybe you don't know much about, okay, do it. Otherwise, skip it.
Fair
And that's
enough.
where I will land.
All right.
Nice. Well, getting down to the nitty gritty here. How many bug farts would you give this movie? Which is a point in the movie where there's a flying ship that looks like a beetle and stuff like that, and one of its weapons is called the fart, which is basically spits out gas and stuff like that.
Outside, the backside
you
of
get it?
it.
As a joke in the movie, I rolled my eyes to it, but then I was like, you know what? That's probably the most realistic Ted Cord Blue Beetle thing. that is his humor.
They
like
did mention
that is his humor.
His daughter character did mention how funny he was.
Yeah, and I was like, you know what? Like, it came
probably
across
accurate.
like another thing of like, ugh. But then the more I thought about it, I was like, you know what? I appreciate that. Like, and
He's
it's
supposed to be
programmed
cheesy.
into it. Yeah, and like different activation things in his old, Beetlemobile, whatever, activate different songs and stuff like that he's pre-programmed. I was like, that all fits his character. I enjoyed that. Little things like that. So, 0 being the worst, because then you got no bug farts, and I mean, what's going on?
All your
5
enemies
being
aren't
the
gassed
best.
up either.
Yeah. 5 being the best, because then you got all sorts of gas farting around, knocking people out.
That's
So,
right.
Matt?
Well, I'm going to go with 2.7 bug farts out of 5. So a few people get gas, but not everybody. And I say this is generally an average movie, but I liked it a little.
Tim?
Yeah, I mean, we are basically in the same landing spot here, Matt. I'm at 2.6, right there, right above average. It's fun at times, and there's some cool looking CG, and there's promise here. It should have been better. Todd?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not far from you guys at all. I think I'm going to land on a 2.9. Like,
Okay.
I think this could be a solid starting point for this character franchise. It just depends on what DC is going to do with it. Like,
We don't know yet.
and that kind of sucks. Like, that kind of sucks for the people who put the effort in to make this movie. And honestly, I think the fact that DC was imploding played a big role into how this movie turned out. Like, I mean, they could have went for the moon on cameos or trying to do something to connect it to everything, and they didn't, and I'm pretty sure that had to do some reshoots for it. So I think the fact that DC and Warner Brothers is just imploding in general caused this movie to have some badness to it. But I still think it's a solid start. I want to see this continue. I think Jaime Reyes is a great character that I would love to see more of. So I hope they do more. And great representation. I mean,
Yeah,
really.
we all agree on that.
Yeah, I mean, like, this is... I know I say this a lot, but, like, if you like to see representation, if you like to see different stuff, you have to go see the movie. Because if you don't, the studios are going to say, well, we tried that, and no one liked it because they didn't go see it. So... that's the sticky business of this business.
Sticky business.
It might not be the finest outing, but if it represents something that you would like to see flourish, you have to go out and see it. Like, you can't, like,
Then you can't
now
blame them.
that pretty much streaming and video sales aren't really a thing. Like, I mean, streaming's a thing, but
The payment revenue is different.
right.
Yeah.
So, that's me. 2.9.
All right. Any last thoughts before we wrap up?
I think one of the biggest missteps of this movie, and I'll say that this is I think this is the biggest misstep of most comic book movies that come out, is the automatic feeling that the villain has to be the opposite of the hero.
Oh, yeah, I was not one of those, yeah.
The guy, whatever his name is,
Mac.
yeah, I mean, that's the comic character he became. I can't remember what his actual name was.
Okay, yeah.
Ignatius.
Something like that.
Mm-hmm.
You gotta get away from the formula. The formula is the villain has to be the absolute opposite
doppelganger
of the hero. So you got this innocent kid who's bright and, like, full of life and hope and heart. You got this other guy who's bitter and torn down, and it just, like, that's the norm that people are frustrated with. Like, so change, like, flip the script, do something different. Like, they just didn't do different enough, I don't think.
Fair enough. Well, that's going to do it for this episode of Matt and Todd Go to the Movies, where we review the film Blue Beetle, and we gave it an average rating of 2.7 and a third bug farts out of 5.
There we go.
Which is slightly above average, and I think we would say, why not? Go see it. And that's about as strong an endorsement as we have for it.
Yeah, that's pretty much.
And so anyway, thank you for downloading or subscribing or listening or doing all those things to our podcast. Please continue to do so, and we will see you next time.
Da 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 da
Da da
da da da.
da da da.